Today's episode is full of good information. Our guest is Ethan Pompeo, who is the CEO of Green Valley Nutrition. And when he was 13, he got what seemed like a very simple case of strep throat. And unfortunately, the virus crossed over his blood-brain barrier and caused inflammation of the brain and created mental health challenges for him for years. We now know this disorder is called PANDAS, and we'll get deep into what that is and what it looks like and what a terrifying disorder it is. Ethan shares what it felt like as a young boy to have that and to experience not only the symptoms, but the social repercussions of it. He shares how he took a dark turn into self-medicating and really getting into some very unhealthy practices. And then the story takes a turn where he decides he's going to take control of his own health. And he starts paying attention to what is providing him relief and in doing research into anti-inflammatory practices and things that he can do to help provide himself some relief. So I hope you enjoy this episode. If you do, please like, subscribe, and share. I would really appreciate the support. Welcome to This Way Up, Ethan. We are so excited to have you this morning. So I want to start really with the very basics. Like, what the heck is PANDAS? And then we'll get into your story.
Yeah, PANDAS, it's an acronym that raises eyebrows. When I say it, people are like, whoa. It's Pediatric Autoimmune Neurological Disorders Associated with Strep. And more simply put, it's generally a strep throat infection, which causes an unusual autoimmune response in the body, namely excess production of strep throat antibodies. And antibodies are one of the few compounds that can cross the blood-brain barrier, meaning they can enter the brainstem and, in my case, the basal ganglia, which is the motor cortex of the body, and cause inflammation in that part of the brain. For me, that meant I suddenly had loss of motor control. My motor function was impacted with tics and uncontrolled compulsive movements. I had severe anxiety, anger, and rage issues as like a sub symptom of these issues I was facing, obsessive compulsive disorder, all kinds of neurological symptoms that plagued my life and took me from relatively quote unquote normal and healthy young man to very sick and disabled in many ways by the age of 13.
That is just so terrifying. First of all, they shouldn't have named it PANDAS because that makes you think of something that's sweet and roly and poly, and really it is a devastating and terrifying
Yeah, it's
situation.
not the cute, cuddly bamboo
And
munching bear that we all know, right? It takes a toll on the patient and the parents as well. The whole family plays a role in this and how we're affected by it.
Ethan, you're in your
I am.
30s, right? So when you were afflicted with it, I don't imagine anybody
No.
knew about it because my son got it 10 years
Yeah,
after
this
you.
was 20 years ago, and it took a lot. It took all of 10 years to even get a proper diagnosis. I was misdiagnosed with Tourette syndrome in the early days, and essentially that was a label that I was given in order to prescribe conventional treatment in the form of drugs. And so by the time I was 17, I had been on over 40 different prescription medications, none of which helped.
40?
40. I felt like a lab rat and a victim of the medical system. The side effects of these treatments outweighed the benefits, and I was really left in an isolated and hopeless position for many, many years.
Okay, so I want to take us back to the very beginning because I think, as I mentioned before, this is still not very well known. It's still fairly new in the medical community. And as a parent of a child who might be experiencing some of those situations, or symptoms, excuse me, I know that pandas is not something they're thinking top of mind. So tell us, when you were 13, what things did you start seeing, or did your mom start seeing that got her curious about what was going on.
Yeah, the first symptoms were insidious in nature. I mean, they weren't like it wasn't like a big blaring light like something's wrong in the beginning. At first, my first symptom was it came on quite suddenly. One day I had a skip step when I walked. I had to tap on my right foot twice while I walked. So I kind of did the skip step. It was unusual, but it wasn't again, it wasn't this glaring issue like, oh, we've got severe neurological problems we need to address. It was kind of like my parents saw me, noticed me doing it, and said, "Oh, that's a little strange, but we'll not worry about it. Right? It'll just go away."
Mhm.
But it didn't go away was the problem. It continued for months and months, and with the onset of additional tics and other symptoms, I started having trouble picking up objects. So my fork or my pencil or in any small object I was picking up, I'd have to pick it up and put it down, and pick it up again and put it down and pick it up and catch it until it felt just right to satisfy that obsessive compulsive urge that I was dealing with. And so you can imagine the frustration if I couldn't get it right over multiple times of
Mhm.
practicing this, repeating this motion. It would start to drive me crazy where I would get frustrated. I was totally cognizant. I was aware of what I was doing and the fact that it was unusual and the fact that I was out of control, but I couldn't do anything about it other than acquiesce and kind of submit to those symptoms and do what my brain was telling me I needed to do. So where the tide kind of turned and we realized something might be seriously wrong is one day I was brushing my teeth, getting ready for bed. My little siblings had already gone down to bed, and I was stuck trying to pick up my toothbrush over and over again. And there was water and toothpaste splashing on the mirror. I started to get uh, out of control with anger and frustration. I started to spew profanity, as is symptomatic of people with Tourette syndrome or PANDAS. And my dad came into the bathroom and said, like, Ethan, what's going on, man? This is so out of character for you. Like, are you are you not able to control this? Like, what's going on? And that's when I kind of broke down and realized, like, I need to get help. Like, I do not have control of this, and it was a earth shattering moment for me in my life.
Well, I will tell you, as the parent who experienced this, and by the way, PANDAS has a variety of different symptoms and outlets for some of these things. Not everybody gets Tourette's. Not everybody has, OCD or it gets OCD. That just happens to be some of the more common ones. Um, but as a parent, watching your child not only have those compulsions or those behaviors, but then also realizing that that child is fully aware that it's unusual behavior is devastating because there's this conflict going on in their minds. Like, I know my son was very self conscious of what was going on. And he's probably one of the most rational kids out there that managed his behavior very well. I mean, he was an easy kid, he was so easy to raise. But once it got to those points, that obsessive need to do it just takes over.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's fantastic that your dad was saying, hey, is this something you can't control? Because I think for a period of time, we're like, well, hey, cut it out, just let's work through this. But like you said, it's something that just can't be
Yeah,
controlled.
it's almost difficult to grasp if you have not dealt with it personally, or if you don't have someone close to you who's dealt with it, because until you lose control of your body, it's something you quite frankly take for granted, right? You just wake up every morning and go about your business, but when that business is being disrupted, every moment, from the things that you look at to how you read to how you turn the lights on in the room, how you get up and get yourself dressed in the morning, all of that is impacted by your ability to control your motor function. Or some people, fortunately, I didn't have this type of symptom, but there's the more obsessive compulsive side of pandas where people have these irrational fears. For example, if you eat with a fork, your whole family will die that day. And it's this disabling fear that, again, deep down is not real and not rational, but yet you act based on that information that your brain is feeding you. And so whether it's motor function or neurological or emotional, your life is impacted on so many levels by this disease. As a parent, it's just as difficult because all you want to do is help your kid, but if you know, chances are if you're new to this, you have no idea what's going on. One, you don't have a starting point, right? And when you're being misdiagnosed like Tourette's syndrome, we don't know what causes that. We don't know how to treat it. We don't There's no known cure. So even if you get that diagnosis, what good is it does it do for you, right? And I know for my father in particular, he really struggled with like just not being able to do anything. He just wanted to help in some way, but he had no tools or ability to do so. And when he would try to interrupt my tics and get in the way, it just made it worse and made it more frustrating for me, and I was unwilling to talk about it for most of my life. I was just ashamed of what I was dealing with. I was afraid to talk about my symptoms. I just really struggled with that internal battle, wrestling with the fact that I had something wrong with me, and it drove me crazy. Quite honestly, my
Yeah.
classmates, my coworkers would look at me and say, they'd see me doing my ticks, and they knew something was up, and they'd ask, are you okay? And I was asked on a daily basis, hey man, are you okay? And it would just drive me nuts.
Mm.
I would get so angry at these people, like, just leave me alone. I was so self conscious about my tics and what I was doing and how it was abnormal and strange. And uh, I think a big turning point in my life was when I decided to say, okay, there's something wrong with me, but like that's all right. I'm working on it. I can own this and just say, I'm okay not being okay. And now, like, to be on this position where I'm on your show today, not only talking about pandas and promoting awareness for it, but talking about some of the things I've done that have helped me to heal along my journey offers hope to others, education, and awareness to this. It's not only taken the weight off my shoulders and relieved some of the anxiety I feel like internally about managing this, but it's put me in a position to help others. So I always encourage people, like, regardless of what you're going through, everybody faces challenges in life at one point or another. If you haven't yet, like, you will eventually. So just learning to embrace that and be open and honest about like life's difficulties and the struggles you're walking through, it makes it a less lonely journey.
Mhm. That's absolutely right. And I will tell you, even from the parent side, it was a very lonely journey being a parent to a child who was struggling like that because there was no opening up. And I think, especially back then, 10, 20 years ago, because it was not known. I mean, we thought my son had a brain tumor. We had it we were getting him MRIs to
Mm.
try to figure out what's going on. Um, but you bring up such a, a critical point for, I think, for anybody, whether you struggle with pandas or not, is that you will go through some hard times. You will go through some very lonely times. But once we start breaking down those, I don't know, insecurities about talking about it and being able to be vulnerable and then turning it into something for good, can really not only heal somebody else, but it can really heal
Yeah,
ourselves.
absolutely. And I mean, talking about it and being open is key, right? When you talk about like going in for your doctor's appointments, if you're bottling all this up and being unwilling or reluctant to share certain details or aspects of what you're dealing with, that does not give your physician a full picture, like a comprehensive picture of what's going on in your life. It makes it even more difficult to diagnose. I mean, even today, fast forward 20 years later, there's very few physicians who specialize in pandas or even know how to treat it. I mean, we're working in this
Right.
area. I work with a number of organizations and nonprofits to try to promote awareness and fundraise for physician education credits to educate these people on how to diagnose and treat properly. But we still have a long way to go. Um, I will say, I think for me, getting that pandas diagnosis was a huge turning point because it took me from a mindset of trying to treat the symptoms with drugs to
Mm.
actually identifying the root cause of this illness, which is the inflammation in the brain. the strep throat infection that's causing the antibody response, which causes the inflammation in the brain, and treating those issues in order to mitigate the symptoms more naturally, right? So instead of just putting a band aid on your symptoms in the form of medication, we're actually targeting these issues, treating the root cause, and seeing much
Yeah.
better results without the medication.
How old were you when you said by the time you were 17 you had 40 different medications, but how old were you before you actually got an accurate diagnosis of what was going on?
So yeah, when I was 18, when I decided like I've had enough of this. I had intense physician fatigue, right? I was sick of the doctor appointments,
Mm.
sick of the prescriptions, sick of trying different drugs. And so for several years, from 18, graduating high school, moving into college, I just bared with my symptoms. I kind of gave up on hope for healing. I stopped seeing doctors. I said, I I don't know what's going on, and this is probably just something I'm going to have to deal with. Around that time is also when I started self-medicating with cannabis. I had developed this mindset that through the pharmaceutical drug use over the years, these prescriptions I had been trying, that substance use was normalized in my mind. And the idea was, if, try this pill, see if it works. If not, we'll try something else. Well, when I tried cannabis, I felt relief for the first time in my life. My tics went away, my anxiety went down, I felt calmer, I felt more relaxed. And so I said, well, this is it. This is working for me. So I'm going to stick with it. And I kind of pushed back against the conventional medicine and started just self-medicating with cannabis, and eventually the side effects of that caught up with me too, right? I started to experienced paranoia and even increased anxiety. There were risks associated with smoking, obviously, and where I was getting my medicine, right? What was in it? There was variability from batch to batch, so it wasn't consistent. It wasn't a medicinal use, right? I told myself that it was a medicinal use, but that line was blurred at times between recreational and medicinal use, and the people I hung around, the
Mhm.
social spheres I created based upon my use were not the best people, we'll put it that way. So I was just surrounding myself with all this negativity all the time, and getting to the point where I realized what I was actually facing and what I needed to do to address the inflammation and the root cause of the issue, like I said, was huge. So I can break down my pathway to healing for you. I don't have a protocol for pandas in particular because one, I'm not a physician and everybody's treatment protocol will be different. But I've developed program what I call start. Sorry, the three S's are stop, start, and smile. So stop doing the things that are bad for you. Stop doing the things that are hazardous for you. Stop doing the things that are not moving you forward. Stop doing things that are unhealthy, right? Start start doing the things you need to be doing in your life. We all know we should be exercising and eating right. For pandas people in particular, you need an anti-inflammatory diet, right? We need to gain muscle mass. We need to get in the gym and feel healthier physically. We need to get rid of negative influences and people in our lives and replace them with people who support us and know how to help us. We need to start doing things that make us feel fulfilled and whole. Like I know when I get behind the drum set, for example, I have no tics. When I'm using all my arms and legs and playing drums and making music and cooperating with others, it's just like a moment of freedom where I can relax and get away from that naturally without drugs. So finding those things in your life and filling your time with them are critical. And finally, the smile is find ways to be joyful throughout this process, because everybody, like I said, is facing a challenge, going through pain and struggle. That's part of life. But realizing that uh, triumphing, finding ways to accomplish success in the midst of those challenges is what makes us who we are. It strengthens us, it teaches us perseverance, it puts us in a position to help others who are walking the same path. So, finding ways to enjoy life in spite of what you're dealing with and be joyful and optimistic, it's easier said than done. But I think if you do these things in that order, stop, start, smile, your life will be completely transformed. And that's what I've experienced.
Ethan, I think that is amazing advice for anybody. Anybody out there. It's so simple and it's so black and white, and I'm confused as to how you got there from such a tumultuous, chaotic, really good portion of your life that you ended up there. How did you come from, you know, first 40 different drugs to now self-medicating, which is unfortunately a place that so many people that are struggling get to, because nothing else is working, so they might as well try it themselves. How did you get from those places to stop, start, and smile?
So when I was in that place of kind of desperation, giving up on finding a cure, using cannabis daily for relief, I got relief from smoking, but it wasn't moving me forward. I was simply using it as a band-aid. It was no different than the pharmaceuticals that they were prescribing me, only it was more effective in treating my symptoms. But if I didn't have access to it, if I wasn't using at the time, then my symptoms would be terrible. I'd end up breaking things, punching holes in the walls, having these fits of rage. I mean, it was not pretty. So I became super dependent on this, and I thought I was doing something right. I thought I had found an answer, but it really was no different than the drugs. And that's what I like to stress to people now is like looking back, I couldn't see it at the time, but I think normalization of self-medicating and marijuana use is a dangerous place to be in society. I think legalization is a different issue, right? I think legalization is good because it opens up an opportunity to study this and see the risks and the benefits and use it more medicinally. But normalizing this use is not good. I mean, I face so many other difficulties, including run-ins with the law throughout my time in college, and it just only added more stress and pain to my life. So I do not advocate for cannabis use. There's certain situations where it can be beneficial, but it's certainly not for everybody. So what really turned the page for me was when I found out how cannabis was working in my body. Like, not just that it helped me, but why? Why was it helping me? And I realized that there's more than just THC present in cannabis. THC is the compound that gets people high, right? It's what most people seek after that substance for, but it's one of over 30 different active compounds in that plant. CBD is what I call nature's most powerful anti-inflammatory. And when I realized that it was the CBD that I was ingesting through my illicit use of cannabis that was reducing the inflammation in my brain, I understood why it was helping me. Now, CBD is not intoxicating. It's completely safe. It's safe for people of all ages and demographics. I mean, there's no known toxic amount that you could take to give you a negative reaction. I mean, it's one of the safest compounds that there is, as far as I know, and it's a powerful, powerful anti-inflammatory. So when I realized that there were other compounds at play here, I was able to seek out a pure CBD supplement and try that, and I was able to actually get those anti-inflammatory benefits without the high, without the risks. I didn't have to smoke. I didn't have to carry around an illegal substance. I didn't have to have the paraphernalia. There was no health risks associated with inhaling particulate matter or ingesting other carcinogens present in that plant. It was just pure plant medicine that helped to reduce the inflammation in my brain without the side effects. And I think when we face health crisis or disability, we often find ourselves in that place where we're stuck. We feel isolated. We feel like there's no way forward. We don't know how to move forward. And we just kind of wallow in our symptoms. And that's how I was. I was living a very sedentary life. I didn't really want to change anything. By the time I got home from class, I was like, I'd had enough. I just wanted to relax and be in my space and not have other people bother me. And it's not a good place to be in terms of long term healing. So I think a lot of times we just need a little push, a little support in order to get us going. And for me personally, CBD was that. It took my anxiety away and it reduced my inflammation so that I could take a deep breath and refocus and reassess my life and say, look, here are A, B, C, and D things that I need to change and address in order to actually start feeling better. Whereas when I was just medicated all day, I didn't have that opportunity. I was lethargic and tired. So CBD has really changed the game and got me, ironically, it got me away from that marijuana use and into a healthier lifestyle. And CBD is not the only anti-inflammatory I take. I take quercetin and vitamin D and other plant-based flavonoids and compounds that are reducing inflammation. I eat an anti-inflammatory diet. I got rid of sugars. I don't drink alcohol. All that stuff that we know we should be doing. It's important that we do it, especially if we face health crisis, because I think so many people wait until they hit a health crisis to actually notice and make those changes in their life. And it's far easier to do it proactively.
So, real quickly, I've got so many questions. I've got so many questions, but I don't want to. I want to make sure I get the early ones out before I forget them. I'm old, Ethan. I forget these things. So, you went to a physician at some point that was maybe more cutting edge, that said, we understand this is not just Tourette's, right? This is something that's causing Tourette's. And I've got two questions on that. First, for someone who doesn't know, can somebody have a diagnosis of just Tourette's that's not inflamed by something else, that would be able to make a traditional recovery, or at least remission of the Tourette symptoms, excuse me? And then there is a separate diagnosis when somebody goes in and has a
Yes,
PANDAS.
they are two separate diagnoses. However, from my inclination is based on my research and just dealing with this for 2 decades, I believe that most of the Tourette syndrome diagnosis are more or less related to PANDAS, and they just have not made it that far in their journey. It's very
Interesting.
counterintuitive to associate a strep throat infection or even inflammation in general with these neurological symptoms. It's just, I mean, the thought never crossed my mind ever, or my parents' mind, until we absolutely scoured the internet and all the books and all the resources. I mean, I had seen at least 20 doctors before we got the PANDAS diagnosis from someone who was familiar with this and who had seen it before. So again, it's just the problem lies in that we're not well educated about this, right? It's not taught in med school. There's limited resources, yet the experts are estimating that 1 in 200 kids has PANDAS. So this is something that's becoming common, even,
Devastating.
right? And it's devastating families, and yet we don't know anything about it. And nearly every day, I see someone jump into our Facebook groups or message us and reach out and say, "Hey, I think my child is having these issues, and we've read about PANDAS, and we want to learn more." And so, because we're putting these resources out there and helping people and educating, it's becoming easier now to get that diagnosis and put those pieces together. But PANDAS is a clinical diagnosis. There's no blood test you can take that says, "Hey, you've got this," right?
Right.
It involves looking at blood work and medical history and previous infections and symptoms and putting all the pieces together and figuring out, like, yes, this is an inflammatory based illness. So it can be very tricky, especially if you're not specialized in this or familiar with it.
I think when the only reason we actually got to the point of being able to see that something triggered this was because of the sudden onset for my son. 1 week, one weekend, which would happen to be his birthday weekend, he got really sick and he was laying in bed. He didn't have a fever or anything. The next weekend, we started to see these OCD type symptoms. He was, touching the ground whenever his soccer team got a goal, and he would be like, "I have to do it." And then it was just the suddenness. It was almost like this snowball effect, and it just came on so fast and so aggressively that it was like, something's just not right. And I don't even remember how. I don't think a doctor said, "Hey, was he sick or not?" It was just almost like, well, he had strep throat, and then we just started putting the puzzle pieces together. If something like that were happening today and I saw that, I think there would be more of an inclination to be able to just say, oh, well, there was an illness that struck this that seemed very innocuous. I mean, every kid gets strep throat, right? I mean, we all get it. It just, not all kids have it cross over the
Right.
blood-brain barrier and create issues. Is it, do you know, is it genetic?
No, as
Can
far as I
the
know,
propensity for that to happen?
no, not as far as we can tell. There's not a genetic component. You may be predisposed. Like for example, my kids may have a higher risk of developing these neurosymptoms from strep infection because of my history, but it's certainly not something you can just pass down
Mhm.
to your kids, right? They're going to have their own battle with these bacteria or these pathogens, whatever is causing the illness. So, um, there's preventative things you can do there. Again, just maintaining an anti-inflammatory lifestyle, keeping your immune system healthy so that you
Yeah.
can fight off the bacteria as your body is intended, instead of getting dealing with these recurring infections and the unusual antibody response. If you're doing everything right, ideally you should fight it off and move on like most people would. I was, for some reason, more susceptible to this, dealing with recurring infections. My body just never shut it off. Antibodies are our front line of defense against foreign pathogens, but when they're out of check like that, when they're produced in excess, they can start causing problems. And so that's what we can look out for. And when you were telling me your story just now about your son tapping the ground, it also brought to mind the idea of uh, how our brains are wired, right? And when we first start dealing with these symptoms, your brain is telling you, you have to do that. You have to go touch the ground. So we just do it. But by doing that, we're reinforcing that action in our mind that says, when my brain tells me to do something, I have to do it and it feels good. And that has to do with brain chemistry. I mean, you're reinforcing the feel good effect by
Mhm.
acquiescing to what your brain is telling you, no matter how unusual it is. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention cognitive behavioral therapy, because it's been such a huge part of
Yeah.
my healing journey. Cognitive behavioral therapy is essentially classical conditioning. It's retraining your brain to respond differently to external stimuli. So it began with Pavlov's dogs, right? If you remember back to your psychology class in high school, the dogs would salivate
Mhm.
when they saw food, and Pavlov realized every time he rang his bell, the dogs would come and eat food. So he took their food away and rang the bell, and they ran up and were salivating. Like, they associated the bell with the food. And so we've taken those classical conditioning ideas and developed cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, which is essentially exposing yourself to these triggers or whatever it is. Like if it's scoring a goal and you have to touch the ground, you expose yourself to a goal scoring situation and then just tell yourself, look, I'm not going to touch the ground, no matter how uncomfortable it makes me, no matter how tough it feels. Like, I'm not going to do it. And you move on. And after a few minutes, that urge, it disappears, it dissipates, and you can move on with your life and keep playing that soccer game. But it may not seem like much, but what you've actually done is triumphed over that tic and that compulsion. And what it does, on a physiological level, is it's reprogramming your brain to respond differently. So as you do that, as you practice that over and over again throughout multiple games, soon you'll find yourself not having to touch the ground at all, because you've told yourself, I'm not going to do it when we score a goal. And I have practiced that with all of my tics, starting with walking up the stairs, because I used to have to run up the stairs out of fear that something was lurking behind me, trying to get me as I walked up the stairs. I had to sprint up the stairs as fast as I could. I started with that, just walking up calmly and rationally, and having someone, uh, I wasn't married at the time, but having my mother, my sister, or my counselor stand behind me and just be my advocate as I walked up the stairs. And before I knew it, after months of practice, I no longer had to sprint up the stairs. So I applied that to every area of my life, turning the faucet on and off, picking up my pencil, right, until I mastered these ticks. And now I don't even have to think about it most of the time.
Okay, Ethan, first of all, I have a flood of memories coming back to me as we were going through this. And I just want to say, from a parent standpoint, cognitive behavioral therapy, absolutely.
Mm.
saved my son, but it is a very difficult process. It's you did a phenomenal job of explaining how it works and how it's so beneficial. But even you just saying, walking up the stairs over several months, it is it is very difficult. As a parent, you are asking your child to expose themselves to something that is terrifying for them. And you have to make sure that they do it. But yet when they accomplish it, it is a huge accomplishment, right? Like once they once my son overcame one of those behaviors, it, it was really a proud moment in the
Mm.
house because it had, the amount of work it took to get there was immense. And, another thing I'll just kind of layer onto that is, at least in the behavior standpoint, what we saw was, the disease is so tricky. Like he would overcome one behavior and then it would like morph into another one, and then you overcome that one and it would morph and it kept on trying to, poke its little head out in various ways to get him to do something to relieve that uncomfortable feeling that he was having. So we were constantly on watch. Okay, what's going now? Where is it coming out now? And I think that might have been due to his age too. He was 11, 11, and so it was just kind of taking over. But um, CBT, I have to be careful because all the CBs are working for you. The CBD and the CBT. CBT was absolutely instrumental in getting him relief from what
Yeah.
the behaviors.
That's excellent. I'm glad we have a common story with that. I mean, it's been shown to help. We know it works, but it's not easy. It's really not. And your symptoms do change. You can have like essentially a relapse in terms of you mastered this tick and it's like a celebratory moment. You're so proud of yourself, and then you go upstairs just to find that like your brain's handed you something new and strange. It's like, oh, and my worst tick I ever had, I had to actually like hit myself in the head at one point as part of my ritual, and it was so frustrating because I knew like to my classmates I looked like a freak, and it was painful at times, and man, that was just like, thank God that's behind me now, but that was just so difficult to work through, knowing that like if you fight it it's going to feel bad, and if you don't fight it it's still going to feel bad. It's like a lose-lose situation,
Right.
and from your parental standpoint like they want to encourage you and do it, but you're asking a lot of your child. Like you have to do hard things at some point in order, and this is
Yeah.
pandas basically forces you to do that. I look back and
And really having compassion and empathy
yeah,
for your kids when they're going through this is so important because it is unusual. Like you're looking at it and you're like, well, just, you know, just turn off the
yeah.
faucet. Why, what's the big deal? But it is a significant amount of energy and bravery that it takes to do something as simple
Mm.
as turning off a faucet or not hitting yourself in the head, right?
Yeah, it's as strange as it sounds. Yeah, it really is. And so being an advocate and an encourager for your child is so huge. And not looking down on them or judging them for how they feel or how they're acting, but understanding they're doing that for a reason, right? Their brain's telling them
Mhm.
that's what's normal almost. And so learning
Right.
to
Yeah.
cope with that and overcome that is very challenging. And I think you raised a good point. Like it's not easy, and I think when you're working on something like this, when you're trying to retrain your brain, and cognitive behavioral therapy doesn't only work for pandas. I mean, you can retrain your brain to uh, like addiction therapy, right? Getting off alcohol. You can use it to even for almost anything, even chronic pain management. People have used CBT to like reverse how your body, your brain process pain. It's a powerful, powerful tool, but it's certainly not easy. And I think what we need is a tool to help make it a little bit easier for us. I look back at my time with immunotherapy. I took, I told you before we got on the call, I'm dealing with a little bit of allergies today related to dust and such. seasonal changes. Well, I took allergy immunotherapy in the form of allergy shots as a young adult, and it did help. And essentially, what that was an injection of allergens to build up a tolerance, to help your body build up a tolerance against those allergens, so that the reaction to them in the form of a stuffy nose and sore throat and such was less severe. And when I went in to those appointments, they always asked every day, "Have you taken your antihistamine? Have you taken your antihistamine?" I was supposed to take an antihistamine and allergy medication before I came in to make to reduce the risk of anaphylaxis or negative reaction. So in a sense, the antihistamine was a tool we were using to make the immunotherapy a little easier on my body. There was less swelling, less risk of a reaction, less risk of winding in the hospital. But the effect of the immunotherapy was the same. I was still building up a tolerance to those allergens and making progress, but the antihistamine made it a little easier. I view CBD as my antihistamine for the CBT training. And this connection has actually
Excellent.
been verified in scientific literature. There's multiple clinical trials showing the mutual benefit of these two therapies. And I noticed it in my own, just anecdotally, before this research even came out. When I took CBD before beginning a cognitive behavioral therapy training session, it was made so much easier. It reduced the inflammation of my brain, right? It helped reduce my anxiety. It helped the tics go away so that things were a little more mundane and calm before I went into this intentional exposure session, right? And CBT, we're intentionally exposing ourselves to these things that trigger us and bother us. So we know we're walking into the lion's den, so to speak. So to have something
Right.
like CBD that gives us some quick, instant relief so that we can put away the distractions and make our battle with cognitive behavioral therapy a little bit easier. The same thing is true, right? The exposure remains the same. Your progress will, you'll still be able to move forward through doing this cognitive behavioral therapy training. You'll be rewiring your brain as the same way you would without additional treatment, but the CBD takes the edge off and makes it a little bit easier. So that's why I always advocate for using them in conjunction, because it truly, taking them both is so much easier and more effective than just using one or the other.
Now, you bring up a good point. Now, my son fortunately was able to take a, um, a traditional medication when he was younger. He would not have been able to do CBT without
Mm.
that medication, but he also would not have been able to get better if he had only done the medication. He had to do both. I think, there needs to be something there. And, I mean, CBD wasn't around when this was, when he was first diagnosed, nor for you. But it's so hard. You have to have a mix. And I loved your analogy of the allergies. I mean, that was a perfect analogy to be able to go, oh yeah, okay, now I can see the correlation and how we need to be using this together. Now, curious, as you've reduced your inflammation through a variety of different things, but if you get strep now, does it flare back up? Does pandas
Well, you
flare
know
back
what?
up?
Fortunately, I have not. I can't remember having strep in many, many years. I mean, I really can't.
Okay.
And I haven't checked my antibody titers in the last few years, so I'm not sure. The last time we checked, everything was normal, right? I remember as a kid, my antibodies were literally off the charts. Like we couldn't even. It was maxed out. We couldn't even measure my eosinophil counts for strep because it was just so high. And that was a huge indicator, like, oh wow, okay, your body is doing something here. But as I've healed, as I've
Right.
made these lifestyle changes, as I've focused on becoming healthier, we see those white blood cell counts dropping with each test, and it's a big indicator that, hey, like your immune system you're getting your immune system back under control. Things are normalizing. You're not responding to this chronic infection anymore. So I can't answer that question because I don't know. I can say I've had other issues like, um, I got uh, well it just depends. I mean, I've had certain illnesses where I noticed my tics spiked a little bit from it, but it wasn't dramatic. In the past years, I've really gotten this under control, and so it hasn't been such a big issue. But I remember as a kid, I knew if I was sick because I'd have these huge flare ups where I'd be completely out of control, stuck in a tic for hours on end. And that was an indication that, like, yeah, my body's now fighting this again, in addition to dealing with the cognitive issues.
No, I mean, I never heard about anything like this when I was a kid. And I'm sure there were some kids that did it. But you just mentioned a statistic of 1 in 200 kids they now estimate have it. I mean, without knowing, because we don't know specifically, but why do you think that now it seems like it's more
I think
prevalent?
it's our exposure to toxins. I mean, it's an unusual immune system response. Something is hurt is damaging our immune system so that, I mean, strep throat, right? It was like it used to be nothing. It was just you got sick and then it was over,
Right,
right? And you might pass it to somebody. It was like a cold, or not, less,
right. Yeah.
and it's not something that you would ever consider like having long term, like brain damage or inflammation because of this infection. It's crazy, and I think it goes to show that our immune systems are not what they once were, right? We're, whether it's toxin exposure, uh, or something else has damaged our immune system so that it is not responding properly to these simple bacteria and pathogens that we should be able to just fight off normally.
Well, when my kids were really young, before all of this drama hit our household, I remember saying, clearly saying, because I believed it. I was like, gosh, I wish they would just get strep throat because I could just fix it with an antibiotic. Whereas if they had a virus, they were sick for weeks, and then it's like now that I can't even believe I
Right.
ever said that. Now it's like I don't want anybody to have let's not get anything. but but I do think you're right. I also think that we've become so clean, and not that clean is bad, but clean, we're not exposing ourselves to normal or you know toxin not we're exposing ourselves to fake toxins, but not to things like streps or colds, because we're
Right.
using the antibacterial gels and creams to kill off that stuff. So our immune system isn't building up the ability to fight off very you know everyday type of issues that we
Right.
may
Yeah.
encounter.
All the overexposure to antibiotics is a huge problem, and I think it also. I mean, it's just a. What's really needed is a pushback against what everything society tells us we should be doing, right? I mean, I considered myself, as a young man, we considered ourselves a healthy household with a healthy diet, yet we were still eating
Yeah.
toaster strudels and Pop Tarts and like sugary breakfast cereal and all this stuff, eating the cafeteria lunch at school. And I mean, I was running. I was an athlete. I played baseball and I ran, but I wasn't doing any strength training or weightlifting. I wasn't growing and pushing my body. And like, it was really a big wake up call, when this happened, right? Because you can even be on the like healthier end of the spectrum in our culture and still have like a terribly sick lifestyle. It's crazy. I mean, all these
Right.
things that we consider normal, like using, deodorant with aluminum in it, and drinking out of soda cans that are lined in plastic and full of toxic acid and sugar and artificial colors and dyes and all this stuff. It's like our daily exposure is just overwhelming our bodies, the toxin load we can handle. And when you're already fighting those things off on a daily basis, your body's just trying to maintain homeostasis despite all the crap you're putting in it on a daily basis. Like, how can we expect it to reasonably fight off foreign pathogens that are trying to kill us, right? It's We need to reassess our lifestyle and think, what are things we can be doing to improve our health on a daily basis so that we give our bodies a fighting chance against these things.
So you would say let's say the top 5 things that you would either add or delete from your life to get you in just the right point the arrow in the right
Yeah,
direction.
and
What would you
again,
say?
I think these things are what we've all heard from our doctor already. We all know we should be doing them, really,
Never hurts
but
to
it
hear it again,
doesn't. It
Ethan.
really doesn't. Sometimes, we just need a little kick in the butt, and myself included, to make these changes. And my goal is that you hear this and don't wait until you're like knee deep in a health crisis to make these changes. But one, I would say eliminate processed foods and sugar. Just anything that comes in a box, just don't buy it. Just get rid of it. We There's a trick. My wife is a health coach with us, and she says walk around the outside of the grocery store. Walk along the perimeter, like skip the aisles and walk along the perimeter. That's where like generally the healthier foods and better options are going to be placed. It's interesting how they've designed the stores in that way. But eliminating
Right.
processed foods and sugars from our diet is just the easiest step forward in fueling your body. I believe that the food we eat, is our primary medicine. So viewing that as like, the majority of what you're putting into your body every day is our food and our water that we drink. So making sure that those things are wholesome and healthy and benefiting you, before resorting to like washing it down with a pill in order to combat the damage you're doing to your body through your diet overall. So that'd be the first one. The second one is start an exercise routine. I used to be severely underweight. I was 135 pounds as a teenager, and so when the onset of these symptoms hit me, I was just devastated very quickly. Since then, I've gained over 50 pounds of muscle mass through weightlifting, working out in the gym. And not only do I feel better and look better, but my functional medicine doctor has described the muscle mass that I've gained as a sink for eosinophils, these inflammatory compounds we're talking about. So, whereas when I was underweight previously, these eosinophils, these white blood cells, and these inflammatory compounds really had nowhere to go, which is why they crossed the blood brain barrier in the first place and entered my basal ganglia. There were just too many of them. They had no place to go. Well, muscle mass acts as a storage
Mm.
vessel for these compounds. So by gaining 50, 60 pounds of muscle, it's diluted the effect of these antibodies on my body because there's more of me physically, but also they can be stored in the muscle
Mm.
tissue instead of going into my brainstem. So, like, again, not only has my trajectory and my journey here got me to the point where my white blood cell count is lower, which is closer to where it should be. But the muscle mass I've gained, the lifestyle I've created, has actually uh, lessened the effect of them on my body. In addition to the fact that exercise is a great reliever of stress, right? It's healthy for us anyway. Cardiovascular benefits, endless benefits. So I definitely recommend getting in a workout routine, starting with lifting weights. It's great for your muscles. It's great for your bones. It's great for your brain. I couldn't say enough good things about it. It's just like CBT. It's tough when you first get started, but as you get into that routine and as you build these habits, you're less sore, you're less reluctant to go. It starts to become a part of your day that you really look forward to. Did you want to say something, or should I
I
keep
agree
going?
with that. Keep
All right.
going.
Number three is get rid of stressors in your life. If you know, for example, there's certain triggers that are going to drive you crazy, like for instance, for me, it was sitting in an auditorium setting, having lots of people around me, coughing, sniffing, clearing their throats, making these little stirring noises, absolutely drove me crazy, and I had to tick every time that I heard these things going on around me. So, in a sitting in a classroom setting was extremely difficult for me. As if going to school isn't hard enough on people. I mean, it was nearly impossible for me. And sometimes I just didn't go, or I didn't want to go because I knew how difficult and painful it was going to be for me to sit there. But it also impacted the ability to like go to public settings in general. Sitting in church was very difficult for me. I was attacked by these symptoms in all areas of my life that were otherwise normal, right? We were expected to just sit there and listen and be quiet. It was very, very difficult for me. So, kind of stepping away from that, not stop going to school, not stop going to church, all that stuff, but thinking of ways that you can start to manage your symptoms so that sitting in those Now I go to church and I sit there, and on most, generally speaking, most days I have no tics at all, and it's great. Now during COVID, it was a lot easier because everyone was hyper vigilant. Like no one cleared their throat during COVID
Right.
because
Yeah.
it was just like taboo. No one wanted to be
Well, you
sick.
didn't,
So
fear of judgment, right? You're like,
yeah, so I was like,
right.
this is great, man. No, there's like no triggers at all for me right now. So, but if you think about it, stepping back from there, like what are things that we all have in our life that are impacting our health negatively, whether it be like a negative influence, a friend who's always trying to convince us to do hazardous activities with them, people who are always negative or bringing you down. Like, get rid of those people in your life, right? Like, you need friends who are going to uplift you and support you. So, getting rid of negative influences, replacing them with people who are going to be your advocate and support you. If there's things that you can avoid, like you may not be able to avoid sitting in an auditorium setting, but if there's things that bother you that you can avoid, well, find ways to get rid of them or replace them, right? There's all kinds of things we can do to make our lives easier on a practical level by eliminating stressors instead of just continuing to fight them and ignore them day in and day out.
I want to make a clear distinction just because I feel like I have a little bit of knowledge in this place. So, first of all, excellent advice. When my daughter was little, like 3, um, we would lose her. We would go to a party or something. We would lose her. We're like, where the heck? We thought we were the worst parents in the world, and we might find her hidden behind a couch or hiding under a table because now looking back, she was protecting herself against those stressors. She didn't want to be around all of that chaos. That was very overwhelming for her. And so, she just, as a young girl, taught me so much in
Mm,
setting up those boundaries and not really letting social norms determine what you should be doing based on your comfort level. Like, she was like, okay, I need to stop. I need to pull myself away from this. But I also want to make the clear distinction that removing yourself from stressors, especially for somebody who's suffering with Tourette's or OCD, does not mean giving into the compulsions and allowing yourself to uh, um, just say, okay, I'm not gonna deal with it. I would rather just, you know, turn on the water or walk through a door 4 times or whatever it is. So it's allowing yourself to not be triggered, but once you're in, if you have been triggered, then you have to stand
right.
up to whatever that behavior is to not
Yeah,
allow it to
very
take over.
well. Yeah, very
Does
well
that make
said.
sense?
That's absolutely right. Another one for me was electronic device use, especially with the smartphone. I'd with the touch
Mm.
screen. I'd have to, if something responded in a way that I wasn't intending, I'd have to go back and tap it and do it again. I often got in these stuck in these ticks where I'd have to tap, 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 tap over and over again until I ended up just launching my phone across the room and breaking the device. I went through a lot of cell phones as a teenager. And another way that I've mitigated that, we can't really get away from that, right? We have to use our phones to some extent. But what I've done is just changed my use model. So instead of waiting until my phone pings to pick it up and get in there, I'll set it down somewhere. I don't carry my phone around in my pocket. It's, call me paranoid, but I'm also concerned about like the radiation exposure. I don't. There's studies that.
Ethan, I think you're okay with saying you're paranoid. You have had an unusual journey here, and being extra
Well,
careful
there's
is
clear
okay.
evidence that the radiation emitted from cell phones is hazardous, so it's not a great idea to keep it in your pocket throughout the day. So I keep it on the table, but not only from a health standpoint like that, but for me, it makes it so much easier to just walk away from it. I'm not at the phone's beck and call all day. Like I check it when I want to, when I'm comfortable with doing it, and it always is off at night. When I get ready for bed, the phone is off. I don't want those distractions. It's just something for me. It's added stress. added energy that I don't need to be spending on other people during the time when I should be resting and letting my brain heal. And so my phone is always off at bedtime. I turn it back on in the morning when I'm ready. And, if there's a family emergency or something like that, well, it can wait until the next day. And some people give me a weird look when I say that, but I'm like, look, you have to be responsible for yourself first. If your health is in crisis, you're not going to be able to help anybody else. You're not in that position. So take care of your health first so that you can be in a position to take care of others. It's like when you go on a flight and it says put your oxygen mask on before assisting others. You have to take care of your health first. That is the priority. It's not your job to make sure everybody else is doing the right thing or being healthy. So control what you can control. That's kind of like the fourth point as well.
which is excellent advice as well. I mean, I think that we so often put other people, and I am guilty as all get out on that. But if I'm not 100% or at least 90%, then I can't help people around me. I'm useless. So you're absolutely right.
No, it's true, and it's a difficult point to people who are more controlling, and I say that in a very respectful way.
Yeah.
Like, but it's just something to be mindful of, right? Like, if having
Mm-hmm.
the phone on pinging at night keeps you awake, and then you're complaining about your sleep habits and your energy levels during the day, well, that could be a very very easy fix. You hold that button down for 3 seconds and turn your phone off, and I promise you're going to get a better quality of sleep and a lower toxin load.
Well, I will say I still don't get a great quality of sleep. I've got a dog, but the one thing that I've done, I've got children who are a little bit older than yours that are not always in the house late at night. So I like to have the ability that if something happens that they can call me. But what I've now done is turn it on do not disturb, but allowed them to have the emergency contact. So if they get in trouble in the middle of the night, theirs will still ring and I will
That's
wake
right.
up. But everything
Well,
else
that
doesn't ding, and that's the way I've
that's
been able to
that's
put up
using your tool. That's a
boundaries.
great example of using the tools you have to your advantage, right? It's like the peace of mind of knowing that if someone close to you calls for help in the middle of the night, you'll get that alert, but otherwise you're being left alone. Like that's great. If that works for you, that's a wonderful solution to get peace of mind on both sides of that argument. So I like that.
But it took me a long time to get there. Let me tell you, it took me
It's
a
so
long
silly.
time to
Like
get
some of
there.
the things we could do in 15 seconds, and we put off for years. Like it's silly.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I am focusing right now. I will tell you that I am. You were talking about sugar, and you might have mentioned soda. I am in the process of trying to pull that stuff out of my diet now because it is. I know
Mm,
that it's so terrible. You know it,
yeah.
right? And it's like, okay, and it's like, how can I do the one hard thing to get me to the next level so that I can cut it out even more? And it's
So
just
one
tough,
alternative that we've found
just
is
surrounded.
the sparkling waters are really becoming a hit. You see them all. They're becoming very very popular, and I think there's like a movement right now of people stopping drinking alcohol and people stopping drinking soda, and getting those
Yeah.
sparkling seltzer waters is a great alternative because it's hydrating. They still taste good. They still have that effervescence, that kind of satisfying carbonation that fills your stomach, but at the same time, you're not getting any of the junk. It's just water, and the ones we like have real fruit juice added, so it's just water and like mango puree.
Huh?
They taste great. They're very satisfying when you want that kind of lift, but they're not going to spike your insulin levels. They're not going to pump your body full of toxins. So that could be a great alternative you may want to try. We've started doing that recently, actually, because we found we were drinking too much beer in previous years. So we switched over to the seltzer water,
Yeah,
and
but
it seems to satisfy that craving, which is great.
I will have to say, and I'm not making an excuse. I've tried the seltzer water. It doesn't have the addictive
Uh,
stuff that Diet Coke has in it.
mm.
That's the problem. Is I am convinced there's an addictive quality there, and so I just need to. I think I probably need to stop before I try anything else. Because if I've got, I mean, you start feeling little bubbles, and then I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not Diet Coke. And so then I'll be like, I need a Diet Coke. Whereas if I just say, nope, I'm going to do tea instead, then maybe I won't get, so much because I tried it. And it's just now I just need to
Well,
cut it.
that's great that you
Need to cut it.
recognize that. I mean,
So
truly, like, again, I think so many people wait until it's too late to make these changes. So if you're recognizing this now and working on it, like that, I commend you for that, really. Which kind of leads me into
don't give too much
you
commending
asked
right
me
yet.
you asked me
But
to
go into
for
five.
5 points, so that almost leads me perfectly into point number five, which is focus on an anti-inflammatory diet. Right? If it's difficult to get good foods in your area, you can supplement. I take supplements in addition to eating a generally anti-inflammatory diet. I don't recommend any specific diets because during my course, I mean, we tried everything to try to get it ahead of my pandas. I mean, I tried a dairy-free diet. I tried completely zero sugars. We tried keto. We tried grain-free. I mean, everything, every fad diet we tried, and none of it did the trick for my symptoms. I may have noticed feeling different in certain areas, but my symptoms remained unchanged. So I don't recommend any diet. I also think that a restrictive diet is difficult to keep up with. Like if you say I'm not eating any dairy ever, that's just so tough. If you don't have a true allergy to it, like I love butter and cheese, like I don't want to deprive myself. I still want to enjoy life and eat the things that I want to eat, but making sure they're high quality foods, and then again supplementing. So vitamin D is something that most people in the northern hemisphere are deficient in. You can look at your blood work and find out exactly where your deficiencies lie and supplement in those areas. But I think looking at anti-inflammatory supplements in particular for pandas, I think I mentioned them earlier, but yeah, quercetin, curcumin, turmeric, CBD oil, vitamin D are all very powerful anti-inflammatories and have helped me tremendously. I still take them every day.
I am so amazed still about how educated you are in your own health and how you've really been able to bring back the joy to your life when it seemed like maybe you were in a little dark place around college age.
Yeah, no, I certainly was. I mean, yeah, now that I'm a parent, oh gosh, I can't imagine what I put my parents through during those years. Yeah, it was a very dark place. I mean, I was reaching out.
I'm going to
Yeah.
stop you right there. You didn't put your parents through anything.
Mm.
The pandas put your parents through it. I mean, seriously, you were just responding to something that you had very little
Well, thank
control
you.
over.
That's reassuring. I mean, I truly was just grasping for straws to find something that would help. And um, as we all do when we face crisis, we're just trying to find anything to like fill that hole or make us feel better. And um, in reality, like there's only really one path that we can take that will bring us to fulfillment. But finding that path can be very, very challenging. And so again, I went through many years of pain and doing the wrong things, and that's my goal of coming onto your show and just sharing my stories to try to help people. Like I went through 20 years of finding a million ways that didn't work. So by sharing my story, hopefully I'll take some of that pain off people who are walking this journey right now.
I love that, April. I love it. Where can people find about you and some of the things that you found out? You said that you are in the process of writing a book. So when that comes out, I will make sure that we talk about that as well, because I think you have a story to tell
Yes,
there.
thank you.
But where can
Yeah,
people
so
find
I've
you?
been working on the book for the last year, about a year and a half actually, and it just is a deep dive into my story, more or less what we've talked about today, but in greater detail. Things I've went through, the interpersonal connections that
Mhm.
were affected, what I found to help me, and moving forward, like what life looks like. And just a book of encouragement, in particular for people who have walked a similar path as me. So that is scheduled to come out very soon. And if you'd like to be notified when it comes out, you can click the link in the show notes. It takes you to my website. It's greenvalleynutrition.com. After experiencing everything I've gone through and needing a source of CBD that I could trust, I decided to make it myself. So it started in the spare bedroom of my house, just kind of formulating oils, trying different concentrations, getting it in my body any way I could. I found out what worked for me. And sooner or later, Granny wanted to try it for her sleep, and Grandma wanted it for her knee pain, and people started reaching out and asking me about it.
Mhm.
And I saw a real need for this stuff that was really hard to get your hands on, especially here in Virginia. So I started my business, and today we ship to all 50 states and internationally, and we're providing a vetted product that people can trust. We're even in the middle of a clinical trial with the University of Virginia right now for chronic pain management with our product. So we're trying to continue education and push the boundaries and see what's possible for this, but also offer hope and a quality product that can help people. So anyway, you can read about my story and see everything that we offer on my website, and as well as signing up for to be notified when that book comes out.
Ethan, I just want to give you a hug. You've become one of my favorite guests. You really have. Maybe it's because your journey is so much similar, so
Yeah.
similar to ours, but you just have. You're so positive and you are doing good with the circumstances you were given. You are an amazing person. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much for
Yeah,
sharing that.
I'm really not special. I've just decided to persevere. I just made a decision to keep moving forward and change my habits and just
Yeah.
never quitting until I found what works. And so hopefully that's an encouragement as well. If you're trying, if you're struggling, like you may be one more step from finding what works for you. So don't give up.
It's a good point, and you have a lot of steps in there. So, well,
Yeah.
thank you again.
Thank you for